Poverty, strife, conflict, and corruption. These are common narratives on the continent. But this is another side untold, the side of wealth, riches, and the continent with most blessed resources. Until you change a man's thinking, you cannot change his life. Africa's story has been written by others. We need to own our challenges and solutions and write our stories. Only Africans can build Africa. My name is Henry Williams. Join me on the agenda on Love War Plus. Issue on the African scene, the politics of succession in Africa, the crisis of stability and power. How critical is this?
Police arrested 12 people for the violence in Johannesburg, while 8 others were arrested.
Africa's brain drain is hampering the continent and it's barely able to realize its economic potential, with many skilled Africans leaving the continent for better opportunities abroad. What is the catalyst for this growing trend and how can it be reversed? That is what we set our sights on today's edition of The Agenda. My name is Henry Williams. Thank you for joining us on The Agenda. And for you who's joining us right now, I want to thank you for joining the show. And for those of you who have reached out to us with your comments and contributions, we do appreciate them, and we also hope that you'll keep them coming. Now, don't forget, you can watch us on the go when you log on to www.lovewarplus.tv or download our app, Love War Plus, from any of the online stores. Now, with that out of the way, we set our sights on what we'll be discussing today, looking at the phenomenon of brain drain. What is brain drain? Well, it sounds like it is a medical procedure, but it's not. A brain drain is when countries' best minds and professionals leave its shores for better opportunities elsewhere at the detriment of that nation. So we'll take a look at this report before I will be introducing my first guest on the show. Let's look at this, talking about brain drain and the impact on the continent, and we'll be right back. Want to see a doctor in Nigeria? Well, you might be waiting a while. Here, there is one doctor for every 6,000 people. But the World Health Organization says there should be one medic for every 600. This means the country has 10% of the doctors that it actually needs to look after its teeming population. Why is this the case? Well, brain drain isn't helping. The Nigerian Medical Association says half the doctors trained here are currently working abroad. And the doctors say there is a number of reasons for this.
We don't earn enough to live the way we should and the way we could. And they're paid so much more abroad. I think the major reason will be for the money, but then also for job satisfaction.
It costs the government money to train doctors, and estimates say brain drain in the health sector costs Africa $2 million a year. Is it something that is going to change anytime soon?
My name is Toechi. I'm 16 and I want to study medicine. I work in a private hospital in Nigeria. I would probably experience the same things I experienced with ones abroad, just with fewer facilities, although it will still be really good. But if I work in a public hospital, I would probably not be paid so well.
My name is Kelly. I'm 17 years and I love to study cardiology. My dad, he's not so thrilled at the idea of me coming back to study in Nigeria because he knows what doctors in Nigeria are currently facing. Because my mom's a doctor. She always complains about low pay, strikes. So my mom is supporting me, but my dad, not too much.
My name is Fayo. I am 15 years old and I would like to study medicine, specifically gastroenterology. The Nigerian government can improve the quality of the facilities in the healthcare sector, and I also feel they can increase the number of resources, because that's one of the major reasons Nigerians leave
My name is Chinaza. I'm 16 years old and I want to major in public health. Initially, I would practice in the US, and then after gaining some level of experience, I will come back to Nigeria to continue practicing. What they can also do is they should be laws that make sure that hospitals have a minimum level of facilities, because if there's no law like that, some hospitals are better than others, and the bad ones discourage people from even wanting to work at all.
So what can be done to stop the drain? According to a research by Watchdog, the top reasons for emigrating are to work in better conditions and to have a better quality of life. Doctors say these issues will need to be tackled if they are to stay in Nigeria.
So I think the only thing that can keep people here will be a deep sense of commitment to the country, because it is a country, and despite the fact that many things don't work, it's a good country.
All right, that report gives us an idea, gives a bigger picture of what we're talking about. And just looking at one sector, talking about the health sector there, interviewing, speaking with doctors, it does give you a picture of what the other sectors look like, because brain drain is not just affecting the health sector, it's affecting every sector when you talk about expertise in a nation. Well, at this point, I'd like to introduce my guest. Dayo Fagbolu is here with me on the show. Thank you very much for joining me, Dayo.
It's a pleasure.
Great to have you. And talking about the issue of brain drain, we'll also be bringing in some of our analysts online. They'll be joining us much later. We'll also be linking up with the Dr. Anthony Osegale much later. He also will be providing his insights on this issue. But let me pose this to Dayo. What are your thoughts on this issue? Is it something that we should be talking about right now?
Well, I think so. Because it goes a lot more beyond just the flight of knowledge and knowledge structures. It also goes into what you call the national culture. And the elements that make up the national culture are things you call power distance, you call uncertainty and avoidance. They're things you call masculinity. And basically, these are either negative or positive indices that affect how people think of their nation and decide on whether they want to reside within it or not. Now, let's look at power and avoidance, for instance. Basically, or uncertainty and avoidance, it strictly refers to the fact that how comfortable am I within my space? How do I feel the nation values me or treats me? If there's a high level of uncertainty within a nation, people tend to want to leave it. Now, same thing goes to power. Okay. Now, if, as far as I'm concerned, power is kept within a certain, a certain quarter, and there's a large distance between those that hold power and those that do not have it, what I do is I shy away from societies like that. That is the nature of human beings. We move away from societies where there's a failing inequity. Now, all these things add up to the fact that we have a culture which represents the fact that people that have put in an effort to excel will always want to move away. Now that is the main reason, the main essence of the brain drain. People say we're looking for greener pastures. These are one of these things, but generally, human beings drift into societies.
It's a normal phenomenon.
Or cultures where they are comfortable.
But in this case, don't you? People say there's more reason a forced migration. Okay, we'll take a break. Dayo, just hold your horses there. We're still watching the agenda. When we come back, we'll definitely be going a lot more into this issue. Don't go away. Stay with us.
We must not allow fear to stand in our way. I have fought against white domination. No, we are not satisfied, and we will
will not be satisfied until justice rolls down like waters and righteousness like a mighty stream.
We must remember that every one of us has something to give, something to contribute. Only Nigerians can help develop Nigeria. All that we require in our nation for our prosperity, our security, our progress will come from within us. And therefore, each one of us must be ready and willing to be a vital part of it.
All right, thank you, and great to have you back. We had to go for that break for a technical procedure, but we are back on track right now, and I have Dio here with me on the show. We're talking about brain drain and its impact on development in Africa. Dio, you were setting the pace for this discussion. We're trying to draw deductions from your theory. You were talking about the push and pull factors.
Yes, like I said to you,
drives this?
Like I said to you, we have what you call, power distancing, and basically what it is how the community or how people see the difference between those that hold power and those that do not have power. Now, if there's a subtle transition, human beings tend to feel comfortable with the fact that they can rise and they can flow through the system.
Along the ranks.
Yes, but if there's a massive distance in the power structures of a nation, people become uncomfortable. And it's human nature to move away from such societies where they do not have a place or a say. Now, basically, all these little indices I mentioned initially, individualism and collectivism, masculinity and feminism, where structures are, controlled by forceful authority or non-forceful authority, are all part of a culture. It is proven, empirically, that people drift away from cultures where the distance between these values are too high, and they have no place, to cultures where there is seemingly a smooth transition.
When you say they have no place, are we talking about to actually pursue their aspirations?
Precisely. That's what it is. Like I've raised the three main ingredients that make up the culture, four main ingredients, sorry. I've said one of them is power distancing. I've said the other is uncertainty avoidance, where I'm unsure of myself. When the uncertainty is so large, it's like, what am I doing here? Now, I'm not saying in terms of just the nation alone. If you were in a particular place and the risk was high, maybe there were arrows flying or bullets flying, the first thing you say to yourself is, can I move away from this uncertain place? All human beings will move away from uncertainty towards certainty. All human beings will move away from places where they don't have power and control to areas where they have it. All human beings will move away from areas where everything is done in a masculine nature. Women are feminine. We refer to feminism as, love, compassion, you know, the godly things.
And in this case, what is the driver? Poor infrastructure.
The driver,
poor infrastructure.
No. The driver is all these elements that we're discussing now. I don't feel comfortable. Power is not within my reach. It's not being given to me. So, and I cannot aspire to it. The question of individualism and collectivism, some people are extremely rich and they take care of themselves. The society, there's no social structure that says, you know, gentlemen, social services, what does this guy need? Let's give it to him. All these factors, every human being, you don't have to be Nigerian, will move away from any of these factors into areas where these factors are well established. It has nothing to do with just being Nigerian. It's the natural human flow. Where there's uncertainty, you move to certainty.
Human flow. Okay.
Simple.
Human flow, Dio says. Let me bring Dr. Anthony Osegale. I'm told he's online. Dr. Anthony, are you with us?
Yes, I'm with you.
I can see you now. Beautiful. Thank you for joining us, Anthony, Dr. Anthony. Dr. Anthony, of course, is a medical practitioner. And yes, his sector has been certainly hit by this brain drain we're talking about. The impact on the African continent is undeniable. Giving you some figures to this, the Nigerian Medical Association says there are only 40,000 doctors in an estimated population of 196 million. That's talking about 10,000 doctors, a ratio of 4 doctors per 10,000 patients. We have a similar figure of 1 to 27,000 in Uganda. We have Malawi, 1 to 50,000. So it's on the continent, it's a serious issue. Dr. Anthony, what are your thoughts?
First of all, thank you so much for having me. We have to situate and localize the very terrible consequences, shortage of health manpower here in Africa as it is. You just got a figure looking at the number of doctors per 10,000 patients. It will also interest you to know that Nigeria ranks very poorly as far as some studies done 2 years ago. Even though Nigeria contributes about 2% of global population, it disproportionately contributes almost 10% of global maternal deaths. And the same is true for several other health index areas that we use to judge the quality of health in countries. And it's really, really painful. And it seems as though much is not being done to address the issue. It's not just one issue that is causing a lot. It's not just one factor. People definitely will move, whether externally out of a country or even internally. There will be brain drain internally within a country based on these various factors. For example, security challenges. When there are security challenges in an area, people tend to move from that particular area to another area. Financial benefits and welfare is another factor. You can also be looking at infrastructure for performance of health activities by health professionals. Where those are lacking, the job becomes more laborious, and then you have people wanting to go to areas where they can get better facilities to do their work and actually enjoy their work. So you also start looking at job satisfaction, and then again, aside from these factors that I just highlighted here, you also look at the general economy of where people are practicing. Everybody and most people all definitely want to go to an area where they think they would do better health-wise, economically. Yeah. Also, the issue of education. The issue of education. People consider the quality of education they are going to receive. What kind of investment is the government putting in place in education in the sector? Not just for themselves, but also for their family, okay? For their children. So all of this play a role in the decisions by health professionals to move ahead. But I think considering studies that have been published, particularly concerning Nigeria, an overriding factor for Nigeria, the immigration from Nigeria, particularly outside the country, has to do with the acute shortage of health personnel in Nigeria. This results in doctors getting burnt out, not just doctors, now even nurses and other health professionals. They get burnt out because they are catering to higher numbers of patients than they are actually supposed to. At the end of the day, they get burnt out, and it's not being ameliorated at all because more employment is not being done of doctors in the area. At the end of the day, what you find is that all these factors put together seem to facilitate an environment that has a positive feedback effect. All right. What that means is all these factors put together keep worsening the problem, and people keep having an environment that I want to move out. The more they move out, the more reduced the number of health professionals are, the more the situation is worsening, the more they want to move out.
Well, I do recall, Dr. Anthony, that a certain labor minister in Nigeria, Chris Ngige, said it wasn't doctors, the exodus of doctors from the country wasn't a problem. It was more of a dividend than a minus. Let me put it that way, because the country was turning over doctors and needed to find a place for them to settle in. What are your thoughts on that?
Well, that is amazing, really, really amazing. I'm a practicing doctor. I work in a government institution, and I can tell you very clearly that the shortage of manpower is very acute, and it is very, very terrible. You have a situation where in a lot of places, a doctor is catering, one doctor can be catering to almost 300 patients in a day in the outpatient unit, for example. Now think about that. A doctor catering to almost 200 or 300 patients in a day. By the time it gets to 100, do you think the capacity of that person to perform has increased or it will reduce? What do you think? So a situation where somebody is saying that the acute shortage of doctors is not contributing to the poor health index that we have in the country, that's just not correct. Yes, there is a positive side to brain drain, especially to receiving nations, okay? But Nigeria and Africa largely really cannot be said to be benefiting from the brain drain. Because let me tell you something about brain drain. Brain drain really is the movement of your technical, highly skilled professionals from a country where there seems to be a poor environment for them to thrive to another country that's ready to receive them. So this is brain drain. So if the best are going out, how can those who are remaining actually be said to be in a better condition, or the system be said to be in a better condition?
Okay, let me turn to Dio, who's somehow been coy about this. I don't know if he's not really ruffled in terms of what he says. Look, these things happen everywhere. It's not a phenomenon that is only exclusive to Africa alone. People will move. But in this sense, when people are moving at this rate, and actually its best hands, its most skilled labor are immigrating, from the country. What threat, doesn't it pose a threat to the development of, the continent when this continues at an alarming rate? Look at the figures, and in a report in 2016 says Nigeria spends $2 billion annually as capital flight on education tourism alone.
Well, look, it's a warning sign, and it's evident that the leadership doesn't have a clue, or they're not listening. It's very clear. I mean, these things send signals to you. It's supposed to be like taking a pulse of a nation. When you see people drifting, and let's take some examples. So it cost me maybe about $100,000 to acquire a doctorate. I studied for 5 years. And when I finally finished my doctorate, I am paid a salary, which is, I'm employed in the university and I'm paid a salary which is less than $500,000 a month, right? Right beside me, my next door neighbor probably, is a senator who earns maybe 100 times or 75 times more than I do. Now, the nation did not sponsor my doctorate, so, I mean, they have no input whatsoever. I used my resources or God-given resources to acquire what I have? What loyalty should I have to such a nation? We see these examples being replicated everywhere. A nation that does not invest in its people cannot make demands on its people. And it's the question of things we've talked about. You know, power distancing, you know, uncertainty avoidance. We all avoid uncertainty. Why must I be loyal to a man who doesn't see any value in me? Right there, the senator is more valuable than I am as far as he's concerned. He pays himself, I mean, incredible wages for doing nothing. All I'm simply doing is I'm trying to create more value for myself. This will continue to happen. The ideal situation is that governments, people in government leadership recognize that, look, there's something wrong here. And they try and evolve a more amicable system.
Yeah.
Why should a professor earn less than a senator?
Good question.
I say it all the time.
Good question, but Dio, try and help me out here.
Yes.
There is a situation I'm trying to come to terms with here. You find out that a lot of the students, a lot of people trying to push their children abroad, some of them can't even afford it.
Right.
But they find the ways somehow to do this. You know, how do you come to terms with this? When you see the figures, you see the amount of money being spent. Like it says, it takes an average of about $33,000 per student to study in the United States.
Right.
And if you find people who actually, maybe say an annual income of maybe 1 million, are still looking for ways to send their kids.
Listen, we always come back to the indices I told you. My kids are all abroad. All of them. All 4 of them. And even my adopted kids, at the slightest opportunity, same thing. Now let me tell you what the issue is for people like me. We have seen, as I've told you, that we have a national culture which is flawed. My parents were teachers. My father was a teacher, my mom was a teacher. I mean, they lived on university campuses. We saw what the community was like, the educational community. We were very content people, and we pushed an agenda in which we wanted to drive the standards of knowledge. The politicians and the military come in and they make a mess of a culture that we have. Now, what I'm pushing my children away from is not the educational system in itself alone, but from a culture of complacency and mediocrity. I couldn't afford for my children to imbibe a culture that says, if you do nothing, you can succeed. Unacceptable to me. So what I was pushing my children abroad to learn is not just have an education in a foreign university, but to imbibe a culture which is acceptable to me. This is a failed culture. What we have here, the national culture of Nigeria, is a failed culture where a child scores 100, another child scores 300, and you tell me because of a catchment area, the child that scores 100 can get into the university. We have lowered the standards completely. So there is no excellence.
That's a major issue.
So what I'm doing is, it wasn't about these issues, it was pushing my child away from imbibing a culture of mediocrity.
All right.
Now, the $30,000 you talked about, it's a lot of money. People sell everything they have to send their kids abroad just to make sure that that quality of uncertainty, it's called uncertainty avoidance.
Yeah, when people do that, couldn't they apply the same approach to take ownership of the problem?
Now, I told you initially there was one problem. It's called the power distancing problem. That's the gap between the powerful and the non-powerful. So, I mean, if they had a situation where the gap between the powerful and non-powerful was closed, they would take a risk and say, okay, you know what? Let's do it here. But because they have seen that the distance is excessive and probably unreachable, they've said, you know what? Also with the avoidance and uncertainty principle in cultures, you know, there's no way. I'm not going to put my children through the same uncertainty I went through.
All right. Dr. Anthony, I'm coming to you now, and I need you to come into this with your own thoughts. The issue of global health community. The global health community spends so much in the healthy sum of money sending professionals from abroad to to assist in the, the health infrastructure in Nigeria. And that raises questions. Couldn't that money, sending professionals here, be put into setting up health infrastructure within Africa that can also help the profession thrive and keep most of its good hands back at home?
Okay, very, very insightful question. Very insightful. Let me just help us by painting this particular picture. First of all, talking about the kind of loss that as a nation we get when we have this kind of dependency consciousness. You are not developing something from the bottom and building it up to be able to actually produce what you want for yourself, and then you can actually help what is happening outside the country. Those people who are sending us these professionals from outside and supporting the professionals with funds and so on to come and do things here have developed their own structure, they've developed their systems, and the system is catering for them, and then they can export some of that outside. And there are benefits that they get when they do that, okay? Now, what is Nigeria losing and other developing nations? What are they losing? You lose tax revenue. Because all these persons who are going out, if they stayed in Nigeria, would have been paying taxes. You lose the possibility of potential future entrepreneurship, because many of these people will probably be engaged in some entrepreneurial activities. They may want to go into private practice, all right, which will of course contribute to the economy of the nation as we see it. Again, there is a shortage of important and skilled healthcare. That is what is also leading to what we are finding now, medical tourism, which is another big multi-million-dollar industry annually, even running to billions. People move out of the country to go and see, in many cases, Nigerians who are working abroad in those hospitals. Okay, very amazing. There will be lots of innovative ideas and many other things. Now, this is just, some of the items that as a nation we end up losing, which the government pays attention to, would at the end of the day help them to understand that the kind of revenue they are looking for can actually be gotten from some of these activities if they will only invest and think about the health sector as a system. It's unfortunate that in many states and in Nigeria, in many states, for example, you find governments giving financial targets to their hospital management boards or to the Ministry of Health in their states.
What's the
financial targets to generate revenue?
Of that? What's the implication of turning a profession that's meant to be on empathy, turning it into, a money-making machine, if I put it that way?
The implication is very simple. This is supposed to be, see, if you are giving targets in health system, you should be giving targets on upgrading the index of health for the population. Okay, for example, we say 10% of the global loss of lives, maternal health, maternal deaths, all right, across the world is being generated from Nigeria. And then Nigeria now says, hey, look, this 10% is so much, we are doing so much, so many people are dying, so many women who are supposed to be giving birth are dying. All right, let us work in the next 5 years and see that we can reduce this to 2%. So that nobody will say anymore that the total deaths across the world, Nigeria is contributing 10%. Let's make it 2% in 5 years. And then you put all your investments in several factors, which I can highlight for you, to generate this. But to place revenue generation as the forefront, on the forefront for a health system, you have already given the death punch to that particular system, because the health sector is not meant to function like that. In developed countries, the governments are investing so much into the health sector. They pay attention to very key aspects of support for the health system that has resulted in their workers staying in the system, producing excellence, in merit being, taken as very primary. If I may go into that.
Dr. Anthony. Dr. Anthony.
Yeah.
I will have to let you go. We're going to have a sequel to this discussion. I need a commitment from you, because there's so much to talk about on this issue. And our next show coming up this same week, I'd like to have you as we thrash out these issues. But I want to thank you for staying with us right now on the show.
Thank you very much. Thank you so much for having me.
Thank you so much for your thoughts. And yeah, Dr. Anthony Segale there, really cranking it up, because it's a really serious issue. And I will be having another guest join us, Kelechi Deka, bringing in the fiscal aspect of this. You know, he's an African economy analyst, and they definitely want to see what impact this will have economically on African nations. We're talking about brain drain. But looking at it, Dio, you were talking about the figures. You were talking about what it costs the average Nigerian to send their children abroad.
Yeah.
Is it worth it, you know, in these climes?
Well, like I said, it's a lot of money. I mean, and some people, like I said, have to sell everything they have to do it. But the objective, you know, we say the culture of any nation or the culture of any group is what you call a mental program. It's a program that has been set in, a communal program that has been set in their minds. Now, to change a nation or to change the outcome of a nation, I mean, what you need to do is to change its culture. And this is a mentally conditioned program.
Does that include in the institutions, strengthening institutions?
Yes. I mean, the institutions themselves are a reflection of your culture. Okay. And your culture is a mental program. And if you're programmed wrong, it's all wrong. Now, what you don't want to do for some of us is we don't want the generation that is coming after us to pick up these bad habits, this mental programming, where it's acceptable, where mediocrity is acceptable. So that is the main reason. The money is irrelevant, because at the end of the day, what you have brought up is a mentally sound child. That is what the church is there for. Likewise, the church is supposed to instill values in children that they can carry on into the future. I mean, the Bible is it. It says everything.
And when I went through these figures, it was quite interesting, Dio, quite alarming if you say it says, you know, okay, let's look at it for Nigeria now, using Nigeria an example. It says, according to UNESCO 2016 Institute for Statistics, the number of African students seeking higher education abroad grew from over 300,000 in 2006 to 400,000 plus, constituting a 24% growth. Now, Nigeria tops the 10 countries sending students to the UK.
Makes sense.
Most likely because of its colonial attachments. Okay, and of all the countries sending students abroad, Nigeria occupies topmost position with 71,000 plus students.
Makes sense.
Yeah. And the figures continue. It says it brings the total amount of money drained abroad to about 92% of the total budget for all educational levels in the Nigerian educational system.
It makes
That's
sense.
For 2016.
It makes a lot of sense. Look, when we were growing up,
some might say the benefits of this are what you call diaspora returns. Yes, we have those figures, very attractive and alluring.
Let's call it a consolation. Because if the amount of knowledge that we have exported is kept within the system, we will generate more. It's just like the man who sells 19 slaves for a mirror. If he kept those 19 slaves, they will farm enough within a year to buy 20 mirrors. Okay. So we export the knowledge to a diaspora that gives us how much you call it, 20 something?
20 something about billion dollars.
They could generate that in revenues. If they build corporations or institutions here
Dio,
with innovation.
Dio, please.
Oh, please.
Your patience is
right.
needed here. Let me bring in Kelechi. Kelechi, are you there?
Yeah, I'm with you.
Yeah, sorry to bring in so late, Kelechi. You were supposed to be a very key part of this discussion because you bring in the figures and ensure that what we are saying is not just vague. We're talking about brain drain in Africa. We're using Nigeria as a contact point, and the figures are glaring here. And it says Nigerians spend 2 billion on school fees abroad. You know, the educational tourism is a major challenge. Then we have the issue of expertise being exported, but rather than they're not coming back. Can you bring in the fiscal impact of this?
Thank you for having me. First and foremost, when you look at the impact, the overall impact on development, as my friend in the studio tried to push across, is there. It has a very negative impact on the development of the country and also the development of the continent as a whole. but you don't address it in isolation. First and foremost, it's important that we get it clear. Migration is a universal concept. Even if Africa is paved of gold, if the streets of Africa are paved of gold, Africans will still migrate. If you check the UN list of the top 10 best countries to live in the world, you will discover that Australia is number 2. But if you check the number of Australians that have migrated out of Australia in the last 2 years, you will find out that the number is quite substantial. Then you ask yourself, why are they living if their country is this well run and this well managed? That brings into a context the fact that people will continue to move from one place to another. But let's leave Australia there, because Australia is a highly developed society. When you look at over 300,000 highly skilled Africans are presently in the diaspora, and 30,000 of them are educated up to PhD level. The development impact of this is quite serious when you take into cognizance of the fact that Africa spends about 4 billion annually to employ about 100,000 foreigners on Africa who work in Africa or in the name of technical assistance. And for a country like Gabon, whereby you have about 90% of the private firms in Gabon are run by expatriates, that's how you get to understand the real impact of what is happening.
Right, thank you. Thank you for shocking us, Kelechi. It's always a pleasure speaking with you. You know, the figures there are glaring and quite alarming. Let me say we brought you in as a teaser because we're going to have a sequel to this discussion. I'm told my director says my time is far spent and we have to draw the curtain on this one. But Kelechi, I want to believe that our viewers will not miss you on the next discussion on this matter coming up still this week. Thank you very much, Kelechi. Thanks for joining us there. Well, Dio, as we wind down, there is more to say. There is still a lot to talk about, a lot of ground to cover, but we have to go. What will you want to leave us with?
Well, I think we need to, like I said, one of the major problems we have is a flawed national culture. We have to start addressing these things in the short term and in the long term if we're going to have anything worth looking at, and if we want, this brain flight or brain drain, as we call it, if we want it to stop. We need to start addressing these issues very critically. People need to feel appreciated, feel valued, feel secure, that if they make a contribution, a positive contribution to nation building, they will be rewarded for it. This is, my last word.
Thank you so much, Dio. And that is where we will leave the discussion until African nations fix issues on corruption, electricity, budget planning, intelligent prioritization, and channeling of resources. The hope that more and more youths of financial and human manpower will not be sold to foreign lands is indeed a pipe dream. I want to thank you for staying with us on today's edition of The Agenda. Many thanks to my guest, Dio Fagbolu, who's been here with me, and those of my guests that came online, Anthony Osegale, doctor, a medical practitioner there, and Kelechi Deka, African economic analyst. Thank you so much for joining us. We will definitely bring a sequel to this discussion on the next edition of the show. Thank you for staying with us, and remember that you can watch us on the go at www.loveworldplus.tv or go to any of the online stores to download our app, Love World Plus. Until we come your way again, remember that only Africans can build Africa. Stay blessed and bye-bye. Issue on the African scene, the politics of succession in Africa, the crisis of stability and power. How critical is this?
Police arrested 12 people for the violence in Johannesburg, while 8 others were arrested.